Today's episode is brought to you in part by Amazon. Everyone loves the convenience of shopping from home. Amazon helps you do just that. Shopping for new computer components, the best gaming peripherals, or even pre-built PCs, there are always new and interesting finds on Amazon. Right now, you can get free 2-day shipping with a free trial of Amazon Prime that you can cancel anytime. I got Amazon Prime. It's pretty awesome. Plus, you can help support Defense of the Patients by visiting defenseofthepatients.com and clicking through the Amazon banner on our website. Just click the banner and do your shopping. No additional charge to you, and Amazon provides support to Defense of the Patients just for telling them we sent you. So remember, before you shop Amazon, visit defenseofthepatients.com and click on the Amazon banner on our website to support the show at zero additional cost to you. Thanks, guys. Now here's the show. All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the DotPro show with BreakyCPK. I am BreakyCPK, of course, and once again excited to be here on what was an absence last week. Yeah, that's right. I'm sure as if you're tuning into this, you're probably aware that I did not have a show last week. I do apologize for that, but I was on vacation, of course. I was actually in the beautiful city of Chicago. I was hanging out with my wife there, and I've never actually been to Chicago. Again, I live in Michigan, and it's 2.5 hour drive. We actually took the train over, just over a 2 hour train ride, but had a good time in Chicago. The point is, as a result of that, there was no show, but I'm back, so don't worry about it, guys. We're back, and we definitely got a good show for you planned today, and looking forward to having some fun with you guys once again. So as far as our game plan for today and what it comes to, there's plenty to talk about, including yet more events happening, including arguably the biggest event in between the Major and TI, of course, Epicenter wrapping up. We'll talk about that here shortly. Also going to be previewing some events that are really currently happening as you're listening to this. The Galaxy Battles as well as the Summit 7 being the big ones there. And then there's also, we're going to have some fun going over some TI7 invites. I'm actually going to give my predictions on who I feel like are going to be the TI7 invited teams, how many there's going to be, and some likely outcomes that we'll see as a result of that. And actually, I plan to be joined by Zrock, my good buddy Zrock, to help discuss that, as well as a couple other things, including patch 7.06D that came out recently, and all that jazz. Also, some more roster information happening, but and then also on top of all of this, I am going to be joined by LD of Beyond the Summit. There, he was casting at Epicenter, so he's going to help us recap Epicenter as a whole and help preview Summit 7, which of course he is at now, and having some fun over there. So as you can tell, we definitely have a good show planned for you guys. But as always, I want to kick things off with my opening segment here of what I like to call the good, the bad, and the ugly. All right, so starting with the good here, Epicenter officially wrapping up last week, and really was a great event. Now, I did not get the chance to watch every single match by any means. Again, I was on vacation after all, but I was definitely sneaking in watching here and there, and to my wife's demise there. But no, or dismay, I should say. I don't know why I said demise. To my wife's dismay. Not that she's against me watching matches by any means, and of course she supports it, in fact. But obviously, when we were on vacation, we tried our best to just simply enjoy the vacation and being in the city and everything. But I did definitely catch a little bit of the matches here and there, and was entertained with what I got to watch. The production, as expected, was definitely great. And, with this event in the past being the Epicenter, a $500,000 prize pool on top of that, you really expect that from it. And they definitely did a great job at delivering when it came to the production itself. But again, being the big event that it was, 10 teams ultimately competing. We kind of previewed this in a previous podcast, of course, in my latest one, and kind of going over all the teams that are in it and what to expect. And, well, the end result, in case you haven't heard yet, Team Liquid, they ended up winning it all with a 3-1 victory over Evil Geniuses in the grand final. So Team Liquid, they are your Epicenter champions. And, one of the biggest things we stressed going into this tournament was that the winning team is ultimately going to get an invite spot to TI7. And I definitely stick to that, of course. I mean, Liquid, not only did they, of course, win the Manila Masters Not the oh no, they did not. EG won the Manila Masters. They won the Star Ladder Invitational. There's just so many of these events, man. They won the Star Ladder Invitational. Now that's what caused that whole Twitter drama between the Haas and Knoxville and a couple others. So where they were going back and forth in terms of how much that should really prove for Team Liquid in terms of should they get an invite or whatnot. Anyways, point being, that alone, I was kind of on the fence of like, I don't think that's going to guarantee them a spot. However, now winning this on top of that, absolutely. There's just no question. In fact, getting to the finals, I think basically secured it for them, with the Star Ladder on top of that. So, I mean, we're going to discuss this more again. I'm going to be joined by Zrock later. We're going to go back and forth there, I'm sure, as far as who we feel are deserving teams to be invited and why. But again, as far as being on the list of just absolute, with this victory here, no doubt Team Liquid are going to be a TI7 invite, and no doubt that's also, again, they were playing for a $500,000 prize pool, and as a result of their victory, they took home a $250,000 portion of this, so half the prize pool there, so that's some pretty good money to be made. But you could argue that guaranteeing that invite spot is even more valuable, because we're talking about a guaranteeing an invite spot to a tournament that's going to have a $20+ million prize pool. Very, very likely. So again, the money's nice, but something tells me they perhaps were even fighting more for the idea of getting that guaranteed invite. Now, how the tournament shaped up was kind of interesting. Some fun storylines from it, I think, and some interesting results. LFY, the team out of China, of course, the sister team to LGD, they ended up going 4-0 in the groups. They went 8-1 overall in the individual games. This is a team that, they picked up Afu recently. He formerly was of Warriors Gaming Unity. He's in the new 4 position for them, but a very good team across the board with some experienced players. Monet, Super, Inflame, and DDC rounds up the 5 core there. They went 8-1 in the groups. They were looking very strong going into the playoffs. They ran into Liquid, though, in the semifinal matchup. And Liquid handled them. They won in about 49 minutes and then 38 minutes in game number 2 to go to the final. So LFY, that definitely they looked very good in the group stages. And off of that, part of it was kind of wondering, were they going to be a team out of China that all of a sudden we're going to see win Epicenter and possibly claim that, or definitely guarantee a TI7 invite spot as a result in just such a chaotic region. And we know when it comes to the Chinese scene, anything can happen. Just a team can come out of, one of these lesser teams that we think is at least all of a sudden explodes and they win a big event. It seemed like LFY was perhaps on a track to do that. But again, running into the very hot Liquid team, at least as of late, albeit in the groups themselves, LFY only went 2-2 with a 5-5 overall record. They actually barely squeaked into the playoffs. With that said, they had to knock out OG to actually get into the playoffs. If they did not beat OG 2-1, they would not have been in the playoffs. OG actually did not make the playoffs. So again, there was five teams in each of the 2 groups. So the 10 teams total, and then the top 3 advanced onto the playoffs, which of course the first team from each group getting the bye into the semifinals, and then the second and third place getting that first round matchup against one another. So, but yeah, OG not getting to the playoffs. Instead, it was LFY with first, Secret got in the second spot, and then Liquid, of course, third. In Group B, it was actually Evil Geniuses, Virtus Pro, and Invictus Gaming making it out. Planet Odd and Clutch Gamers were the teams that were left out there. Na'Vi and Clutch Gamers both went winless, unfortunately. You always hate to see that. I mean, honestly, I'm a little more surprised on the sake of, frankly, for both of these teams. I mean, no, I did not expect these teams to do very well in this event, nor even make the playoffs. It's not that surprising, but to not even get a single game victory in 2 teams that are definitely these hot teams lately. Na'Vi, of course, they've been doing plenty. They're actually playing at the Summit 7 right now. Again, we'll update that a little bit more later on and kind of preview that more. But they looked good getting to that point. They've been looking very good, like things that have been coming together finally lately with their newest edition. And then you have Clutch Gamers. Talk about being a hot team. They're out of Southeast Asia. They're arguably the best team out of Southeast Asia right now with what the streak that they've been going on. Now, but back-to-back disappointing performances for them, unfortunately, at these recent lands, and then the news of them actually not being able to compete at Summit 7 because of visa issues has kind of really taken away from that. So, again, both of them going winless, some storylines there. And the playoffs played out. Secret beat IG 2-0. Liquid beat Virtus Pro 2-1. Then EG beat Secret 2-0. Liquid beat LFY 2-0. And then Liquid over EG 3-1 in the finals there. And that included a 17-minute Game 1 victory for Team Liquid, by the way, in the grand finals. In fact, all 4 games were actually pretty short. Liquid won all 3 of their games in 17, 29, and 33 minutes. That's insane. Like, that's fast. It's some fast Dota. And that is one thing Nahaz definitely stressed when he was talking about Liquid, was that this is a team that plays very well laning phase and early on in the game, and they get those leads, and it's hard to overcome that. So, anyways, that's really that's the good that I have for you guys. Like I said, I don't want to really go too much more into it, because I am going to be joined by LD shortly here, and we are going to be talking about the event as a whole. But yeah, no, it was a great event to watch, though. And again, if you happen to miss it, definitely recommend checking out some VODs of it, specifically the grand finals. It's like overall, 2 hours. If you have 2 hours, you could basically watch all 4 games. So really not that bad right there. But I will say we saw a lot of Bristleback. Bristleback was a very successful hero. In fact, I'm looking at the stats right here. Bristleback was 12-4 overall. Crystal Maiden was actually the highest, most played hero with 24 games. The next closest being Darkseer and Trollwiller with 19. So she by far was the most played hero. And on top of that, she had a 71% win percentage. That's insane to me. Being the top played hero and having such a high win percentage. Think Valve is gonna, and actually they did. With that said, they did in 7.06D. Of course, they quote unquote nerfed Crystal Maiden slightly, but it's going to a point where maybe something does need to be done more to the hero, because I know she's kind of considered one of these nothing needs to be changed heroes. She's fine. There's going to be stronger heroes, but when she's constantly being the most picked on top of having a high win percentage, you can't just let that, be. And I don't think Valve is. They have been making tweaks to her. It's just going to be a matter of time before we have the ultimate tweak that perhaps does her in. But that's kind of a side thing with the epicenter right there. All right, so going into the bad now, this was shocking, frankly. This was news that neither I or anyone expected to hear. Loda of Alliance, formerly as a player, that's right, you heard me right. Loda is no longer a player for the Dota 2 roster on Alliance. He actually stepped down as a player. Now, it was kind of interesting, there's a whole write-up on it, and obviously he gave a quote to the situation. It starts very interesting, and I quote from Loda here: "It has been a hard year being an Alliance fan, and it has been a hard year for me personally. What some of you know is that I've been part of Alliance not only as a player, but also as a team owner. Even though a lot of people told me that you cannot play and run a company at the same time, I thought if anyone could do it, it would be me. Needless to say, I have not been able to balance things as well as I would have wanted. I have not been able to give Dota my 100% focus, and to anyone aiming to win TI, that says it all." There's more to it, or end quote there, but there's more to it as far as what he says, but that first paragraph right there gives you a good idea of, what's going on here. And it is something that I've actually got the chance to talk with some other people behind the scenes about. When Alliance, when I really first started coming into the Dota 2 scene as a caster and really putting my time on it, I bet this was back early in the, September of 2016. So it's been about, a good 9-10 months here. Again, I've been watching this scene since the very beginning, but of really getting involved, it's been a little less than a year here. Alliance was one of the first teams that I really, would consider myself a fan of. That and Complexity were kind of the two big ones for me. Mainly because they have a lot of, former Han players, of course. Anyone that knows me knows that I come from the Game Heroes of Newerth, and there's a lot of these former Han players that play in the Dota 2 scene now. In the case of Alliance, obviously you're looking at Jonas Fan, Houndskin, and Limp there. Loda technically played a little bit of Han too, but I don't really consider Loda a former Han player. But so the point I'm getting at, though, is that I've always kind of been interested in the idea of who Alliance is, and I've kind of, in some sense, not being biased for rooting for them as a caster by any means, but part of me would like to see them do well, and I've always kind of wanted to see them do well. They have not been doing that well. That's been very obvious. Now, my argument against that is it them not doing well, or is it a mix of the competition is getting so much better, and it's not fair to judge this roster of the previous roster of Alliance. We're talking about an Alliance that, of course, won TI3 and has this prestigious history of being one of the best teams we've ever seen play Dota 2. So it really just isn't fair, just because they're the Alliance tag, to expect them to be doing that necessarily. But with that in mind, they have been struggling, even just in general results. They really haven't had a lot going very positive for them. One of the biggest things that I've talked with people about behind the scenes even is the idea that is Loda specifically as a player giving it his all? Because he's a hard, now I know he kind of has this demeanor that he's, not the friendliest guy or whatever, but I haven't had the chance to actually, hang out beside Loda and even have a very short, brief conversation with him in passing. But I could tell that even though he may come off like that, he definitely has a lot of positive to him. And of course, he's been such a impactful player for the game as a whole, and somebody that has, helped sell the game, as well as the idea of being what a true competitive player, what it takes to be a true competitive player. He no doubt belongs in that category. And if there's a Hall of Fame for Dota 2, which, down the line perhaps there will be, I think this is a player that's got to be one of the first players in that Hall of Fame. I mean, you get the point. This guy, I don't think I need to make more to it. This guy's a big deal when it comes to the Dota 2 scene. But again, with all of that in mind, it was kind of maybe feeling like, or that was one of the things of maybe this is why they're struggling, is because does he really want to give it his all anymore? Does he really have that passion still when he's already won a TI and, being an older player and everything, and now having a new group of players that he's playing with here? And again, I have nothing to really back this up, because it's not like I hang out with the dude or anything like that, but that was one of the bigger things that, to me, that stood out as this could possibly be what's going on. And with this news, obviously, it pretty much shows that, right? And again, it goes back to the first paragraph that I read right there of his quote, how he's just not able to put his time anymore into focusing as a player 100% and the commitment needed to, be a champion in the end. So, long story short, he is stepping down as a player. He's obviously still in the ownership role and, going to be focusing on that side. I wouldn't be surprised if he, coaches or mentors a team in a sense, but he's no longer part of the team. Now, why I put this under the bad category is because of just that, how, if this happened after the TI qualifiers, didn't qualify, whatever, and then this happened, it would be a little more like, okay, that makes sense. He's just finding now's the time to quote unquote retire, semi-retire, whatever, from playing competitive Dota. The fact that we're getting this news literally a couple of weeks, if that, before open qualifiers start, let alone then the actual qualifiers, which they're going to be a part of, I'm sure. It does kind of suck for the team and the players themselves, but on top of that, it sucks to lose a player of his prestige going into such an epic event coming up right here. So that's why I put it under the bad. Now, again, I want to be clear, I did not put it under the bad because Era's replacing him, as I don't think I mentioned that yet. So, by the way, Era is going to be replacing Loda as the new fifth. Talk about another player that's definitely had some solid history in this scene. But because I do think Era could definitely prove to be a very good fit. And honestly, if Era has the passion, that it could honestly be a better team in the end. Maybe it could be better fit. He has history playing with these players as well before. So maybe this could all work out in the end. Not that Loda's a bad player, but just because the idea of the synergy and the passion not being there, it's a mixture of a couple things. But again, it goes back to it's being bad because the idea that we're not going to have Loda as a player anymore on Alliance, at least for, the upcoming short-term future as we see it. That leads me into the ugly. Speaking of Era joining Alliance as the new one role as the new carry player for the team. Again, I think it's overall a pretty good fit for the team, and I think it's actually a good replacement player. Where it's ugly is what he's leaving behind. that's the former NIP roster that, in a sense, he's kind of just ditching. Now, I don't know the full story here. I don't think there's been an official post on it by any means. All I know is that I saw a tweet earlier today from Insania, actually is, of course, one of the support players and a player that I've known for the longest time, suggesting that ex-NIP will not be continuing together. He was kind of confirming that idea that, obviously with the news there. Now, I don't know. I honestly forget if I don't know if I had mentioned this the previous podcast, because I think it happened after, but by the way, NIP dropped their team. So in case I haven't mentioned that yet, NIP dropped their team, announcing that they wanted to focus on other things, and they felt like that the team wasn't unfortunately doing as well as they hoped for, whatever. And then, we saw tweets coming out from Era, from Insania, from basically members of the team suggesting that they're going to, regret this. Not that it was malicious or anything, but, they were making a point that they're still going to be playing and they feel like, that was undeserved, whatever. But now with Era leaving, and again, this tweet here from Insania has realized people have been wondering, ex-NIP will not be continuing together. That sucks. All of a sudden, a team, again, we're talking about just a couple of weeks before the qualifiers are happening right here, a team with a lot of promise and could have been one of these wild card teams that things came together, could have made a splash here in the European scene, is no longer. And so now you have these free agent players, I guess, and also with the roster lock situation, obviously you have a situation where Era is able to join Alliance, so I'm sure there's very special circumstances where if they really wanted to join a team for whatever reason, they possibly could. But we're talking about, these players now are left cold and dry here. We got, Hani, Trixie, Insania, and Mickey, essentially, as well as Quakefy, I guess you could even throw in there, who's been kind of rotating in here and there. Again, no longer a team. So it hurts the competitive scene as a whole, I feel like, the competition as well as just the fan bases that maybe were there. Again, I don't know if this was Era, if Era had talked to this team beforehand, or, this is just too good of a deal to pass up. It's very possible, but there has been nothing released, to be fair, that really has explained the situation. I don't know if we're ever going to get it, but simply put, Era leaving the team, he's now in Alliance, and his former teammates no longer have a team now to play with. So that's why I consider it the ugly. And, hopefully for the sake of the former NIP players, maybe something does happen where maybe they decide to find a new fifth and they play as a team or whatever. But as of right now, they are not playing together. Again, as confirmed by Insania right there. So there's the good, the bad, and the ugly, guys, but we still got plenty of show coming up, including going to be joined by the one, the only LD here of Beyond the Summit to talk Epicenter, as well as the upcoming Summit 7. LD, how's it going, man?
Oh, man, it's an honor. The legendary BreakyCPK. Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, please. Oh, please. By the way, I hear a little background noise going on. So you're at the Summit house, I'm being told?
Yes, I am in the backyard. I am roasting in the sun. I'm probably going to get very burnt, and I'm loving it.
Nice.
Just got back from Moscow yesterday, so a little jet lag, but, straight into Summit for us as well as a few of the teams. So we're doing media day right now, so we're filming some of that dank content. Hopefully some fresh memes coming your way soon.
Looking forward to that, as always. That's what helps make the Summit event so much fun to watch and I'm sure be a part of, right? Like, that's like one of the biggest things about why you guys wanted to put on the Summit, for a very enjoyable tournament, I guess, behind the scenes even.
Yeah, it's obviously it's a very different type of event. We're not trying to do like the big glitzy show and the flashing lights, dubstep and, drop the bass. It's much more, chill out, kick back on the couch, hang out with your friends and enjoy it. Still high quality Dota, but in a much more relaxed environment. So
yeah. All right, but before we get too much into the Summit, I wanted to actually go over Epicenter. You had mentioned you just got back from Moscow there. How was the event as a whole? It seemed like there's been a lot of reaction post-event that it's just been very positive.
I think Epicenter puts on a great show. So I think that's really where they specialize is, they know how to do basically everything that I would say is kind of the antithesis of what we do at the summit. So it's interesting coming from their event to ours where, they know how to do the big, exciting show with the crazy stage, the hashtag production value, I think like more than anything, like their stages are always amazing. The lighting's great. Just the environment is really hype, deafeningly loud in the venue, almost to the point like you couldn't hear the fans maybe as much as I would have liked on the live stream, but the crowd was really into it. So, I mean, Epicenter puts on a great show, especially for the people who are able to attend it live. If you ever get a chance to go to an Epicenter, I think it's one of those events where like being there actually adds a lot, and the live stream experience doesn't quite capture it, but it was still a great event in that regard. So the show part of it was great. I think Epicenter, still some room for improvement with like the English broadcast as far as it feels slightly neglected at times in certain ways compared to the Russian broadcast. Like they didn't have a dedicated English observer for this event. We didn't actually have our own crowd mic, I believe, because at least from when I was listening to the live stream, like you couldn't hear the crowd. So I'm not sure what the setup was there. The event was great overall, but I feel like the English audience was maybe very slightly underserved there. But again, I'm nitpicking. It was a fantastic event.
Yeah, obviously, you work with BTS and everything and running events yourself. You look at those things a little bit more. I mean, I find myself doing that. Like I'm watching a tournament with my wife and I'm noticing like the camera angles or whatever. And she's like, I wouldn't even notice that. But, it's when you're working with it for so long.
Right, it definitely is one of those things where you start to pick up on the details a little more, and sometimes like it's like, oh no, is it going to ruin your ability to enjoy it? But I mean, I always try to like go and spend at least a game or two sitting in the crowd, experience it like a casual fan as much as possible, and just soak it in. And fortunately, I'm usually not working every game at these events, so I get that opportunity, and I enjoyed what I soaked in. I'll put it that way. So it was a great time. I would love to go back. Moscow was really nice. I had never been there before. And, I won't say that Kiev has blown me away in the past when I've gone there. So that was like my main exposure to Eastern Europe and CIS. I was a little underwhelmed, but Moscow is a beautiful city. And it's kind of sad that you need a visa as an American to go there. I'd love to go back sometime, but it's a little bit of a pain to get the visa.
So Team Liquid, of course, the team that won it all. Talking about the tournament itself now, the actual matches here. Liquid 3-1 over Evil Geniuses in the end. Did that surprise you at all? Did Liquid just look good?
It would have surprised me if you told me like before the event, like, oh yeah, Liquid's going to win this tournament 3-1. They're going to beat EG in the grand finals. That absolutely would have surprised me. By the time you got to the last day, it didn't really surprise me at all because Liquid had demonstrated like they weren't a fluke. All their players were playing really well individually. They had developed a lot of depth in their strategy. Like early in the tournament, there was quite a few games where it's like, let's just pick Miracle Invoker and then hope he can carry us to victory. At least, it felt that way a little bit as an outsider. I'm sure there was more behind the drafts, but at times it just felt like they weren't. They were a little bit reliant on that type of just forward protect Miracle type of approach. Like, yeah, sure. They would have Matama Man on a second carry, but really it was ultimately up to his Invoker or similar type of hero to take over. But as the tournament progressed, everyone on that team was playing their A game. Matama Man's Lone Druid was a big problem. GH probably the MVP of the tournament, whether it was the Disruptor, the IO. Kuroki had a just Jerex-esque Tuskar performance to the point where you could argue for a first phase ban of that hero. Mind Control was super stable and solid in the offlane. So like all of their players stepped up. It truly was a team effort. Didn't surprise me at all that they won. I might have expected it would go 5 games versus EG and that maybe EG would even get the early lead, but Liquid definitely proving the haters wrong. And I mean, I think without a doubt have secured their TI invite now.
Oh yeah, no, we've talked about that in previous shows here. I mean, there was Epicenter and then the one before this, the one event,
Manila Masters.
Manila. Those are basically the 2 big events that you win that, you pretty much guarantee yourself an invite spot. So that gives us Liquid, that gives us EG, and then of course you figure OG with their major victories. Is there another team that comes to mind for you that you're like, okay, they're gonna get an invite, no questions asked?
Yeah, I think there's a top 6 who are guaranteed invites right now. So OG obviously won 2 majors. They're in. I think EG is guaranteed after their performance at Manila. They've looked quite solid with the new roster. So EG is a lock for me. I consider Invictus Gaming a lock. They're probably one of the shakier teams over the last month or so. But they won DAC, and DAC, for all intents and purposes to me, was just as big and just as important event as the Kiev Major. Had all the top teams, really stiff competition. So I think IG is a lock because of the performance at DAC. Newbie, I would also put as an invite as well. They had the one win finally, took Zotac Cup. But prior to that, a lot of strong showings. Didn't win all that many events, but went deep at a lot of tournaments. I think Newbie is one of those teams where on paper it's like, oh, they don't have a big major tournament win, over an EG or an OG type team. But when you look at the bit larger body of work for Newbie, I think you can't really argue that they've been consistently solid for the last 6 months. And then the last team, Virtus Pro, great showing at the Kiev Major, decent showing at other events. Summit 6 champions. I think VP is the last lock. So those are the top 6. I think all of them get invites, and then the question really is like, does anyone else deserve an invite? You can make a case for NP. They had a decent showing at Manila. They've had some other okay performances. They look reasonably strong online. Secret had an okay showing at Epicenter, but not spectacular. Had either of those teams won Manila Masters or Epicenter respectively, I think they're locks, but they didn't. So they're the 2 teams I feel like where a strong showing at the Summit might just push you over the top. Like I'm not sure a Summit championship on its own is enough to secure a TI invite, because end of the day, a lot of the top teams are missing from the event. You have VP as I think the only guaranteed invite who's here. Still some good competition. Secret and NP are both to me on that right below the top 6 list, but I think if either of them wins the event, that might just be enough to push them over. Historically, Valve has always done an even number of invites, so then I guess the question is do they both get invited maybe anyway? So who knows? Maybe they'll both get invited no matter what happens. I still think those are the 2 teams up in the air, and then beyond that, I think it gets really messy really quickly.
Absolutely. And as always, whenever these invites come out, it's no doubt going to be, entertaining to see what it ends up being in the end. And I know that, for me, I think you got 4 teams maybe, but I don't know if I'm as confident with you as these Chinese teams. Maybe Newbie with their work, but Invictus Gaming, a little, but then you got a team like Team Secret, like you said. And yeah, if they perhaps win Summit 7 right here in itself, maybe not necessarily that means it, but because of how they've done.
Listen, I'm biased, right? Obviously, the Summit is our event. I'd love to say, oh, you win the Summit, you got a TI invite, but DAC was the top competition. DAC was basically as stacked or almost as stacked as any of the majors. So at least on the upper half. So I think when you look at that event alone, if you're going to say, oh, a team that wins a major is guaranteed an invite to TI, I think DAC is, for all intents and purposes, it's a major. Sure, the prize pool's a bit smaller, but really you're evaluating how stiff was the competition, and the competition of that event. You had OG there, you had EG there. They had to beat a lot of those top teams to go all the way, and they did so very convincingly too. So I think the only mark on IG is that some say, they're kind of a one-patch team. Now you've nerfed Monkey King, but Boca just hasn't been able to take games over. That's a somewhat fair criticism. I think they haven't really shown that they're a true Tier 1 team in the new patch, but end of the day, they won one of the biggest events, and you just kind of have to go. At some point, you just do have to go off of results and respect the intensity of the competition there. So I think IG is definitely a lock. And historically, Valve has been very, very. They have heavily favored teams that win events. Actually finishing first in an event matters a lot more than getting a string of second or third places. When you look at the Valve invite history, last year Fnatic was top 4 at the Manila Major, I believe, and then did not get an invite to TI, still had to go through qualifiers. So maybe that's where Newbie, you could even make an argument, is a little bit shakier, but I think their record's actually more solid than IG overall. So
yeah. Looking at the team list here for Summit 7, it ended up turning out to be, pretty damn good overall. Now, there were a couple of last-minute changes, of course. Clutch Gamers unable to make it. DC replacing them as a result, and an LGD taking over for CDEC Gaming. So what's it like dealing with these visa issues? And it's got to be frustrating, right?
Yeah, it's definitely frustrating. So the process is very different depending on the team. So some teams, so first, like, each country has their own requirements. So if you come from, for example, like a Western country like the UK or the Netherlands or Canada, you're normally eligible for ESTA, which allows you to just fill out a form online. And then you enter the U.S., you explain your purpose for being here. You don't have to apply for a visa. You don't have to give your passport away and wait for processing. So ESTA is the easiest pathway, but it's not available to every country. A lot of the Eastern European nations, a lot of the Southeast Asian and Asian countries are not eligible for ESTA, so then they have to go through the normal visa process. Under a B1 tourist visa, you are allowed to attend competitions and compete for prize money. It's a valid use of the visa. And so normally the tourist visa is the route that the majority of players will take. However, certain embassies, right? I think the most notable one right now is Manila. There was a petition started by a bunch of the team managers, maybe 1 or 2 years ago, amongst other folks, to recognize esports as being, a legitimate, and basically as a real thing. And I think there were 100,000 signatures. It was on whitehouse.gov. And from what I've heard, apparently someone at the Manila embassy saw this, got wind of it, said, oh, okay, they wanted to be treated seriously. Esports is a real thing now. Now you have to get a P1 visa, which is an athlete visa. The problem with the P1 visa is it requires a petition from a U.S. organization. It requires a lot more paperwork, a lot more documentation. It costs to get it expedited. It takes a minimum of 2 weeks to process, and that plus the legal fees, you're looking at $5,000 per player to get a P1 visa. It also requires more time. So when you factor in you want to give every team a shot to play in your events, you want to have qualifiers, then you have to secure the team's visas before you book their flights because you don't want to waste money on flights. Non-refundable flights are extremely expensive usually. When all said and done, it really makes it impractical for pretty much any event besides a Valve event to go for P1 visas. And so, unfortunately, that has put some of the Filipino teams in a bind where they've had a hard time getting visas to the summit. CDEC, so that was the Clutch Gamer situation. CDEC, they have a problem with, I think it's September, has applied for a B1 visa 6 or 7 times now, and he's been rejected every time. And unfortunately, it's one of those things where until you get the visa the first time and basically they're worried you're going to overstay, right? So if you get the visa, you come to the US and you leave, the next time it's a lot easier for you to come and leave because you have a record of not overstaying your visa, of leaving when you're supposed to. But getting it the first time actually gets harder the more you've been rejected. So he's in a difficult situation. I think if say his team ends up qualifying for TI, hopefully Valve will be able to. I know they have a senator in Washington State who historically has helped them in the past. Obviously, that's not a resource we have access to, but. It might come down to something like that, or he may even have to go for a different type of visa, like a P1, in order to get approved. So, yeah, visas are a pain in the ass. It is one of the downsides to running events in the U.S. Certain countries that require visas are a lot easier, and many of them, like the Philippines, hardly requires visas at all for most countries. So, it's disappointing that the teams who qualified and earned their slots here aren't able to compete. We are still giving them prize money as a way to, at least compensate them. So they get something, but obviously, for all these teams attending the summit right before TI qualifiers is really good practice for TI, and potentially, I think some hoping if they do really well here, maybe earns them a berth directly. So it is a real bummer for those teams. They don't get the shot.
Yeah. So I don't want to go off too much of a tangent here, but just kind of off of all what you're saying right here, what's the possibility of a international summit event in the future going elsewhere outside of Los Angeles?
It's actually something that we haven't really investigated too seriously, but we have talked about. I know back when we ran the first summit, Valat loved the event. It was his first time experiencing this for Dota, and he was like, this was back when he was with Starladder. Starladder has to run a summit for Dota and CIS, and they wanted to do it proper, Eastern European style. So the vodka would be flowing, and it would really be, extremely laid back in terms of the style. Unfortunately, that just hasn't happened. I think the event could work well in other countries. It might make it more appealing to some teams that, like the summit is really convenient for the North American teams. It works really well. The edition before TI and last year before the Boston Major, it kind of worked out as well because, they're already going to have to come to the US anyway. So for teams that want to stay in boot camp, or, just acclimate before TI, go around for a bit, it can work out. But, if the major is saying Kiev or something, all of a sudden it's a very long flight. So I think it's something we would consider. The nice thing about running it here is we have a dedicated event space that is set up. There are a lot of things that can go wrong running a tournament out of a house because, houses generally are not really built to have 40 computers, 40 monitors, plus all your production equipment set up. So we've made a lot of modifications to the house over the year and a half that we've been here to, make sure it runs smoothly. We've kind of learned the house, so to speak. Whereas if you run an event in a commercial space, be like a convention center, stadium, they have the facilities and infrastructure designed to handle, higher electrical demands, the internet requirements, having enough bathrooms, all that sort of thing. So you don't really have to worry as much about, we haven't been able to stress test in advance. So that's my one kind of fear with moving to a new venue. But that said, it would be great to take the summit somewhere else, I would say. So maybe someday.
All right, that'll be fun to see how that goes. But for now, it's staying in Los Angeles, and there's good reasons for that. And
people like the weather here too, Breaky.
Yeah, exactly. The weather's so nice there. Yeah, it's a beautiful place to go to. I actually grew up in Southern California myself, so I know all about that. And looking forward to going back soon again. But anyways, that's another thing. Is there a team, or I want to say, what team are you most excited to hang out with? Being the Summit event, especially, that's kind of what you guys, advertise really. It's a very good hanging out session with the players behind the scenes even. Is there one team that really stands out that you just can't wait to hang out with?
My dream couch right now is the Puppy Envy Bulba couch. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think we'll get Puppy and Envy on the same couch. Team to hang out with. RTK is a really fun guy. He came to the first summit back when he was on the old DK. And his English is better than most of the Chinese players, but it certainly wasn't fluent back then. But the first summit, we had a viewing party at a nearby bar for fans to just come do meet and greet with the players. RTK was a lot of fun. He actually ended up leaving the viewing party with some fans and just went out with them on his own. We were a little worried we had lost RTK, and we're like, oh no, our player down. But he's a lot of fun. I hope we can get him on the couch at some point. Aside from that, I would love to see Mason make an appearance. Mason is an interesting story for me, the whole replacing a legend in Fear leading into TI4, and then he just kind of disappeared, then came back. He's always been known for having very strong opinions, not being afraid to speak his mind. It seems to me like Mason's mellowed out a little bit, at least outwardly, from his old NA Dota Flame days, but I feel like the real Mason's still in there. So I'd love to have Mason on the couch. Those are probably a few of the main names. I mean, there's obviously PyCat. You get the 3 for the price of 1 cast with the Melk voices and whatever other accents he comes up with. Where PyCat can basically shut on the couch, 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 shut on the couch. He's very opinionated, and I think the full anime couch is a possibility. Maybe get MSS on there with him, and talk about some animated Japanese classic television.
Oh boy, people are gonna love that. The weeb's gonna be out in chat there when that happens.
I won't be able to contribute a whole lot, but I will learn.
Exactly. All right. So again, I don't want to keep it too long here, but one more thing I kind of wanted to just touch on. Being with your mind and everything, being somebody that's organized a lot of events yourself, and running Beyond the Summit there and everything. There was an announcement yesterday at E3 that came out from ESL actually. Called basically this Grand Slam style format where they have 10 events throughout the year via ESL, and a team that wins 4 of the events throughout the year actually gets a bonus $1 million on top of the winnings that they get from these individual tournaments. Is something like this, would you find it interesting to be in Dota 2, or do you see it's something that could be positive, or is it something that's not necessarily would work for Dota?
So Dota is in an interesting place compared to other esports. This is actually one where I could probably talk about it for 2 hours. I'll try not to do that for the sake of your listeners not going insane. But in I guess like my short thoughts on the state of Dota as an esport, the health of the ecosystem. The biggest issue I think you encounter with Dota right now is that it's a very prize money driven scene. That is a huge positive in some ways because players can form their own organizations. They don't have to be taken. They don't have to worry about being taken advantage of by orgs. Although obviously that line of reasoning only goes so far when you see player run orgs have at times Secret being a great example. Run into problems with their own players. I mean, players are people too. They're perfectly capable of taking advantage of each other, having misunderstandings. So I don't necessarily even believe the player-owned orgs are actually better for the scene. But in theory, having a high prize money scene relative to like other sources of earnings means players can focus on competition. That's great. It does have a lot of downsides, though. Players tend not to be very focused on their fans, on the media, compared to other games. They're not as reliant on team salaries in Dota, and the result of that is they're less interested in creating entertaining content for the fans, engaging on social media, doing extra things like signing sessions. Now, there are some players still in Dota that are fantastic. So this is by no means a blanket statement. It's more of like a trend you'll see compared to, say, CSGO or Smash Brothers Melee, scenes which are very, much more less reliant on prize money and more reliant on either organizational salaries or, direct fan support through subscribers or, crowdfunding or what have you. I think with Dota, because it's such a prize money driven scene, it's hard for players to care about other events unless those events are a pathway to the majors. That's not to say players don't give a shit, but it's more like, players who attended Epicenter and Manila, obviously, they want to win these events. But the reason why they want to win them is not so much for the event itself, but more either as practice heading into the majors on TI or to secure their invite. So that's really the primary goal for a lot of teams. Like the prize money's nice at those events, it's nothing to sneeze at, but in the context of TI, you win TI, you can not even qualify for any other event the rest of the year and you will still make almost certainly more money than any other team in the scene or the same as a team that wins literally everything else, just basically for getting hot at the right time. And performing well for 2 weeks. Now, obviously, it requires a huge amount of individual skill and preparation to get to that point. But I do think that what ESL is doing in Counter-Strike is interesting. I think the seed is much more set up for it. The CSGO majors are in the realm of what other events are running for prize pools. Like a CSGO major is $1 million prize pool, and those used to be $250,000. The problem, and so in comparison, like at ESL Pro League, one of their big CSGO tournaments, same for ECS with Face It, those both have $1 million prize pools. So because of that, this is actually a huge incentive. I don't think this incentive would actually be enough to sway Dota teams to, first of all, ESL doesn't run enough Dota events. And I believe the way this system works, it's like you win either 4 ESL or DreamHack events, which between the two of them are over half of the CSGO calendar, as I understand it. I think it's like 60 or 70% of all CSGO events are by one of those orgs. Dota, they don't run maybe more than like 5 events a year between the two of them. So I think it's a lot harder to implement it in Dota. I think that amount of money wouldn't even be enough to sway a team if they thought it was going to damage their major preparation or potentially would cost them a chance to qualify for a major play in another tournament. They still might not be that interested. So it's like a nice perk, but I don't think it would kind of have the influence on Dota that it could because the prize money in the majors and TI is just in the stratosphere compared to any third-party event. Even the absolute biggest third-party events in Dota are best like 1/6 the prize pool. Like Epicenter's $500,000. I think DAC was $500,000 or maybe $250,000. And that's just nothing compared to the majors and TI. The problem for Valve is you can't really go back, right? Like they already cut one major. If they cut the prize pool of the majors as well, or they change the way TI crowdfunding works. If they're not funneling that money to the players on the same amount, I think it's going to invoke huge backlash from the community. So that was kind of a tough position in that regard. But I mean, I think basically, long story short, it's cool what ESL is doing. I think it makes a lot of sense in CS. I think it's a big incentive to play those ESL and DreamHack events if the teams didn't already have it. I think it's very difficult to create the same incentives in Dota because the prize money from Valve events is just so much bigger than anything else that you're never going to be able to compete at a cost-effective basis.
Fair enough. No, that makes a lot of sense. Very well said. And yeah, so it's going to be interesting again to see how things continue to progress when it comes to the competitive scene, especially within Dota 2. And do you feel like that things need to change still, or are you happy with overall where the scene's at?
I don't think the current system is ideal. I look to CS:GO as a much healthier ecosystem. Now, okay, so what I mean by that is I think the Dota ecosystem for now is still quite good for the teams at the top. It's probably the ideal ecosystem if you're a top 4 and a top 8 team. As long as you're getting to the majors, getting to TI, doing well at those events, there's absolutely nothing to complain about. It's the dream for them. I think the problem with the Dota scene is it's hard to make third-party events matter, and this is true almost for every event. Now, there's like a certain small subsection of events which happen at the right time of year, before TI invites have been decided, who have the right list of teams competing, like OG, EG, IG, VP, Newbie right now, like those teams that are expected to get a TI invite. It would be different teams if you go back 6 months or a year. But that top 4 to top 6 teams, like if all the boxes are checked, you have all those teams, TI invites haven't been decided yet, a TI invite's likely on the line for your event, and there's no other competing events, then you could do pretty well for viewership. The other issue that you run into is sponsors are really not all that interested in Dota events compared to in third-party Dota events compared to like other esports, and the reason for that is you can't get any exposure at TI and the majors really right now, unless you sponsor a team. So basically, the majority of sponsors who invest in Dota are just mainly interested in the teams because, for example, let's say I sponsor the Summit, that doesn't get me any exposure at the big event of the year, the majors and TI, which dwarf everything else. So is that really a good investment? It can be, depends on your budget, depends on what types of, deliverables the organizer can provide. Whereas like, if you look, for example, at CS:GO, Valve has third-party organizers run those majors, and they're actually selling sponsors. So it's a very different ecosystem compared to what we have in Dota. I think in a way it actually hurts third-party events that Valve does not have like sponsors in the traditional sense for the majors and TI. Funny as it might sound, there's like an annual or semi-annual Reddit thread that always happens. Like, why, thanks Valve for not having sponsors and not subjecting me to all these video ads. It's like, guys, they don't need sponsors because you guys spent, $80 million on cosmetics. If you did that for other tournaments, they would be happy not to have sponsors. Obviously, it's not realistic when you're not the developer to offer those types of perks. Valve is largely not providing third-party crowdfunding for any tournaments right now, aside from tickets, which nobody really buys. And it's usually free to watch Dota TV anyway. So you're in an awkward position for a third-party organizer where sponsors aren't really all that interested in sponsor your event directly. It's difficult for fans to care about most third-party events unless they're in the like very small, like 1 month, in between each major and TI, like part of the calendar where qualifiers and invites haven't been decided yet. And you have all the right teams playing at your event. And the teams who already know they're getting invited to the majors and TI are going to be very selective. They want to practice, but they don't want to play too much, and they don't want to show all their strats. So they want to play like the right number of events. So at that point, they're only going to play a handful. So long story short, I think I would like to see a scene more like CS:GO, where prize money is not as big a part of player compensation, and you compensate them in other ways. I would like to see third-party events more directly linked to the majors and TI. Whether it's like winning a certain tournament secures you a spot at a Valve event, or you earn points. At the very least, I would like to see Valve promote these third-party events. They already have the technology to embed streams in the client. They've done it for the majors and TI. I mean, it wouldn't really cost them anything significant aside from maybe a little developer time to schedule it. And it has a huge impact on viewership. When you look at, there's a big jump in viewership between the Shanghai Major and the Manila Major. And the biggest reason why was not because PGL did a better job than Perfect World, although they did a much better job. It was on the same time zone, Asia, which is generally not even great for the Western viewers. But the big difference was Valve embedded the streams in the client for the first time ever for Twitch. So people who might not have known about the tournament found out about it. And this is especially important, I think, for third-party events, which already can struggle to build fan awareness around them. So that's a big thing. I'm very disappointed Valve has not done. I hope they will at some point in the future. I would like to see them bring back third-party crowdfunding in some way. Unfortunately, right now, it seems they don't want to go that direction. They would rather just limit the the crowdfunding in game pretty much exclusively to TI and the majors, which further increases the prize pool gap and further kind of diminishes the importance of these third-party events in the fans' eyes. So I'm not entirely happy with the way Valve is doing things right now as far as third-party events go. I think they're doing a great job of, with the first-party circuit as far as keeping, those events overall, like especially TI, everyone's excited for it as they are every year. I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic event. But TI is 2 weeks out of the year, So I would like to see them put a little more energy into the other 50. I understand they don't want to take the super hands-on approach. It's just not really their company philosophy. But I would hope that there's a middle ground. I would hope there's a little more space for third-party events, a little more support and promotion for them. I don't know if we'll ever see it. Dota's been out for 7 years as Dota 2, and pretty much at this point it feels like Valve is unlikely to suddenly turn it up from 2 to 10 in terms of how much they're pouring into the game. But a man could dream anyway, right?
Exactly. And I'm glad we got your insight on all that, because I know that I had Bill on a couple of weeks ago from Beat, and he's the one that made that Reddit post recently about the idea of third-party tournaments, and I know you weighed in some opinions on Twitter, so got even more of an explanation as to what you're thinking there, and so it does make sense. And we'll see if Valve is still willing to make adjustments and change moving forward. But on the positive, once again, you got Summit 7 coming up here, and you're at Media Day right now, so I don't want to take up too much of your time here, too much more of your time even, LD. I really do appreciate you joining me, but I got to ask one last question. Who's going to win Summit 7?
Oh, good one. That's a tough one. I am going to say, I think it's Secret. I think Secret look really strong right now. NP is the other main contender. I think VP has already said that they're taking the event in a very relaxed approach. They're not, it's like kind of practice and fun for them after Epicenter. They're not too worried about winning it. So I don't think VP is going to bring their A game. Otherwise, maybe they'd be the favorites. But I like Secret a lot right now. I think they're playing super well. If it's not Secret, it'll be NP. But I have Secret taking the event currently.
Yeah, I think Secret has the most to win, as we were kind of talking about earlier. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do as well. So we'll see how it works out. But again, that starts here later on in the week, and looking forward to having some fun with it. But LD, once again, thank you for joining me here on the show, and I look forward to hanging out with you, obviously, in a couple of weeks myself when I join you at the BTS Hub.
All right, we'll see you. We'll see you soon for the Hot Tub Time Machine, man. Should be a blast.
Oh gosh, that's gonna be. I don't know what to expect, but we'll see. It's gonna be fun, I'm sure.
It'll be wonderful.
All right, so once again, happy to have LD on and talking some good stuff here, but I'm actually happy to be joined by my next guest now, a good buddy of mine. Going to be joined by Zrock. Had him on before. We're going to talk some fun stuff here with Zrock. How's it going, man?
I'm fantastic. How you doing, Breaky?
I'm doing good as always here. I'm looking forward to having some good conversation about, I talked a little bit with LD there, but getting more into it ourselves and getting our own opinions on these TI7 invites, man. It's coming up quickly. The qualifiers start, 2 weeks from now?
Yeah, very, very soon. The invite list has to come out in the next week.
Yeah, and that's kind of as we expected. Summit 7 and Galaxy Battles going on. That's going to be pretty much right after. I mean, they're going to do it on Monday, I assume, or very soon after that, Tuesday at the latest, right? Because the open qualifiers start literally next week, like the 22nd.
Generally, in history's sake, they've given them 2 days from the open qualifier date to decide if you got to play in them. That's when they let you know the invites, the closed qualifiers. That's when they send all that out. I have to imagine Galaxy Battles won't play a huge part in the invites. To be fair, it's mostly tier 2 teams. But Summit is definitely going to be a huge driving force in it.
Yeah, so
if they're still considering, at least.
Well, see that's kind of the funny part too, because that's actually a good point, and that's something we're going to kind of go over here with our list. And yeah, if they're still considering, because they probably have a good idea of who they are planning to go. I think there's really like one, maybe two teams, depending on the results from this weekend, that may have a shot to influence here.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's about right. I think probably the biggest question mark in this whole thing right now. I mean, if you look at the summit, Na'Vi got voted in, right? They were the last chance team.
Yeah.
But I think Secret's probably the biggest question mark.
Wait, did Na'Vi get voted in? Hold on.
I think so. Weren't they the last chance? Because Empire won the region.
Empire won, but there wasn't a vote, was there? Hold on. Let me.
I don't know. Someone always does that, like, make a meme video thing.
No. Na'Vi was the one that qualified. They actually beat Empire initially, and then
we
Empire.
Casted that. Did I really forget that?
I think so.
Wow.
Yeah, no. See, well, because you're thinking they got invited to Epicenter.
Oh,
Epicenter is what
okay.
actually invited them, or they got fan voted or whatever. But
yeah,
no,
they 3-0'd Empire that day. Oh, I forgot that.
Yeah, they looked really good. So that's why I was actually happy for them. But
I don't know if they have a shot though, right? They've struggled here on out. Like if you look at Navi's recent placings, they don't really exist. This is a decent sized tournament, and although the prize pool is not big, this tournament carries a ton of prestige. But I mean, look at Secret. We saw them. I mean, I don't want to count out SG Esports progress, I guess, in the last major, but I don't think you can use that as a black mark against Secret. In reality, I think it's just a team meeting a region they've never played against. Stuff happens, and you move forward. But they've performed so well for so long, it feels like it would be weird to not have them.
I agree. Okay, let's start with this. Let's start with the absolute locks. Let's start with the teams that were confident, like there's no question,
okay,
right?
The confident four, for sure. OG, VP, IG, EG. The top four from Kiev. The top four have never not been invited to the next major.
Really?
That's been a hard and fast rule unless a team is disbanded.
Okay, so what were the teams again?
VP won it.
Yeah.
IG got second. And then EG... OG won it. VP got second. I had this all in a tab and I screwed up. OG was first. VP was second. IG and EG were third, fourth.
Yeah, okay, so those are the four teams. So you mentioned that. All right, see... Really? So you think they are going to stay? So that's more of just a pattern thing then?
Yes. I mean, it's come down to the fact that, like, you got to go off of history's sake, right? That's how they've always done it. While they don't announce legend slots like they do in CSGO, it's been a hard and fast borderline rule. And to be fair, I mean, look at who those are. VP is iconic. They are hands down the best team in CIS. OG back-to-back majors. I mean, they're monsters. Like, well, what else do you say? They won Kiev, they won Boston. Like, these guys are gods. You invite them. IG, I think, has a little bit of a question mark, but they've put up enough results, and they made top four of the last major. So, sure. And you can't have a TI without EG. I just don't think you can. It's actually just not allowed.
Valve will not allow. They almost tried not to allow it to last year. We were talking about that before.
They're just like, all right, we got to put EG on hard mode here. You got to run the open qualifiers. Oh.
Yeah, for those that know what we're talking about, because I actually didn't even realize this until I was doing this research, but yeah, EG had to play in the open qualifiers last year, I guess because he had a late roster change that caused those issues.
Yeah, what was the actual move? I should know this. Yeah, they switched some people super late in it, and it caused a full roster swap in the last few seconds. And yeah, all sorts of weird problems, but they ended up having to play all the way through the opens. Okay, so the more questionable ones, right?
Well, hold on here, because
sure.
Well, I want to talk about that idea in itself.
Sure.
Whether or not that's going to be the case, I mean, I don't know if that I get why they do it, I guess, but to kind of keep the prestige on these majors and how that's a big deal. Like you said, I forget what you call it, but I guess CSGO runs that similar idea where, you know, if you do very well in a set event, then you are going to be invited to the next one. But man,
CSGO's is loose. CSGO has an issue. CSGO uses what they call a legend system. If you make top 8, if you get the top half of the field, you're guaranteed in the next one.
Yeah. So literally,
So literally, you just win your group and you're basically in. 'Cause, I mean, look at who those are. VP is iconic. They are hands down the best team in CIS. OG back-to-back majors. I mean, they're monsters. Like, what else do you say? I mean, No matter how, like, so most notably, I mean, more people here probably watch some other esports. Gambit from the last major. No-name CIS team. They've tried for a while. They squeezed through the first round of the bracket, and all of a sudden they're invited to the next major. Zero results since then.
That's why, I mean, and if you get third and fourth in a major like this, but man, with it being a single elimination on top of that now, like, I just that feels weird to me that they give it to the top four. Like, I'm almost skeptical to give it to the runner-up team. Honestly, if Virtus Pro,
really VP,
well, see Now, VP is different than Mouse Sports. Like, when you take way back to the Boston Major with Ad Phenom, I was completely against Ad Phenom getting invited to Kiev, and I gave my reasons there. They looked kind of struggling in between, and there was 7.0 that came out. Now, 7.06 has come out, which has definitely been some changes, but it's not nearly as influential as 7.0 was. So, I guess kind of talking it out loud now, sure, VP going is fine. Now, EG, on the other hand, actually touching on that note real quickly, if they did not win the Manila Masters, I don't know if I'm as sold on them getting an invite spot.
Because what have they won since TI last year? They won, like, Mars D2L, and there was, like, one Chinese tournament they got thrown an invite to. It was, like, 4 teams. It was super minor.
The ESL, there's, like, an ESL Intel or something like that.
I think it was, like, China Top something. It was
China Top,
Yeah. It was like 4 teams. It was Wings, Newbie, DC, and EG. I've got it pulled up now. And so they won that. Great. Good for them. But EG is a team that we know them as a loser bracket team. They drop in groups. They drop their first of the bracket stage, and they come back. They build a storyline that means something. And you got to understand, for the invites, it's not necessarily strictly performance. These are US events. EG has a massive fan base.
Yeah, but
there is a little bit of influence that ties in there. I think it'd be the same thing if you chose not to invite OG. OG has a massive fan base.
You would hope that's not the case, though, and I don't know if I'm as sold that that's the case, because, yes, I get from the business perspective, but at the same time, I mean, these teams just happen to be in that spot of they're getting invited for their play, too. It's not just because they have the massive fan base, obviously, but
I think it's like a tiebreaker formula. I think if you have a couple teams with similar results, that's what pushes a team over the edge.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's possible, but okay. Actually, I want to touch on something else that you kind of brought up there too.
Sure.
How far do you go back? Do we look back to TI6 and say everything after TI6 is influencing your invite spot? Because personally, I've just been making a note on since Kiev.
Okay, so TI6 I think has one singular point, and that is who won. And in that case, it would be Wings. Obviously, you can't invite them because reasons.
They're banned.
Yeah, well, they're banned from Ace.
In China.
They're banned from Chinese circuit
That's
events.
a whole nother story. Let's not even open that door.
But, I mean, to be fair, they don't even really have a team right now. It's not anything close to what they are. They don't even have a Wings team. Now it's Wings R is the only team they have left.
Yeah, they split up.
But, so yeah, you can't invite the TI winner. For the first time ever, we won't have a winner back. And that's something to mention. But, yeah, that's the only thing I think you go back further than the last major. Otherwise, I think, yeah, you're right. Kiev on.
Yeah, because OG kind of feels like the defending champion, don't they? Because they're the ones that won the 2 majors.
That's a streak, man. Because they won Boston Major, they got second DAC, which was another massive tournament, and then they win Kiev. Like, these guys are nuts.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it's just been huge result after huge result for the last 12 months. Mm-hmm. It's nuts.
Getting the chance to talk with Fly, obviously, in a previous show here. I'm sure you guys got to catch it. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. He definitely talked about how just important this is for him, too. And, you know, this idea that, yes, winning the majors has been nice, but as you'd expect, he wants that TI victory under his belt to be able to say that, then bring up maybe that he is one of the best players of all time, one of the best captains at least, and OG is one of the best teams. Without TI, they can't really say that.
Tal is a competitor. I think if there's a guy in the pro scene that could care less about the money and more about the prestige, it's him. Like, Fly is so much on what happened from a competitive standpoint and the legacy it leaves. I mean, the guy is amazing to talk to. If any of you guys go to TI listening, walk up to him if you see him, especially if you go to the bar crawl that they organize every year. He comes every year if they're not still playing, and he is the nicest guy in the world. He'll talk to you for an hour. He's just super calm about everything. And he brings a perspective that I love to see in Dota. He is a competitor first and foremost. Mm-hmm. He doesn't go away from tournaments because the prize pool is not big enough. Like, they play in anything he can get his hands on that he thinks is going to be semi-competitive. He's just an awesome person.
And the dude is fit, too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all right, I'm not going to mention it here. Look up who his dad is. I mean, way more important than you think. But
oh, yeah.
He's got a really cool backstory as to why he is that in shape, and it's really cool. But
all right, enough fanboy and fly.
Moving on. I love OG. The people are fun.
I do too. I would not be disappointed if they win. Anyways, back to this here. So I get what you're saying. All right, that means OG, VP, Invictus Game, and EG. These are the 4 teams. See, IG, I was a little bit on the fence with, but honestly, I was probably going to throw them in as my invites anyway. So there you go.
Yeah.
Those are the 4. Then you have to put in Liquid, right? Like Liquid, then absolutely, because they just won Epicenter. They won Starladder before that. They're getting an invite. There's no question in my mind.
Even without the win, Liquid, I think, was on the fence because their style of Dota is so fun to watch, and it's so different from a lot of the teams right now that I think it turned some heads. It got them invites into stuff that maybe they shouldn't have, or maybe they necessarily didn't have the results to back up. But yeah, after you win iLeague and after you win Epicenter, you're in. I agree. That's my 5th lock for sure if they're doing at least 5.
That's the other interesting thing, right? Because so last year they did 6, I want to say.
Yes.
And I actually haven't looked back at even further back internationals.
It's been around that number the whole time.
Like I said, you got TI5 was... Does it say invited teams? Oh, here we go. Invited teams. Wow, there was 10 invited teams at TI5.
So TI5 was the year that SCA didn't really post a team, right? Let me look here. Cool.
Well, they had MVP Hot 6 and MVP
Oh,
Phoenix.
yeah, that was back to Hot 6 era? Okay.
Yeah. Wow, 10 invited teams. Jesus. Okay. Yeah, we have to. I'm glad we're doing
I'm trying to remember why they did that. Okay, so if you looked in NA at the time, so that era you had Complexity, you had, that was after C9 and moved over to Europe. So you had Call EG, Brax's team. I can't remember what name they were operating under at the time. Fire. There really weren't that many teams in a lot of the regions that played. And so I think a lot of these invites just went to the fact that the qualifiers weren't going to be that competitive. Like, look back through these qualifiers here. You had teams like North American Rejects. Korok was still around. You had a couple teams from South America, and to be fair, they didn't really have a scene back then. It really just didn't exist. You still had Leviathan trying to play. It was the downhill slide for a lot of the teams in NA, especially. I mean, that's the region I focused on. But if you click like the South American teams, you're only going to find maybe 8 names you even notice on that list in the qualifier. Like, they just didn't really exist. So the field was just a lot weaker. And as we look to this one, the only reason I could see them only inviting 4 to 5 teams as opposed to 6, maybe 7, the regions are just so much stronger. We've got arguably 4 competitors out of Southeast Asia in Faceless, Clutch, Mineski, and
Happy Feet,
and
TNC.
There's even one more, TNC. So I mean, you have a ton out of there. You've got arguably 2 in South America in SG Esports and Infamous. The field just looks so much stronger. You're probably going to have to split CIS in Europe because we've got VP is probably getting an invite, but we've got Empire, we've got Navi's even starting to show up again. Not even counting Alliance, and I mean C9's gone, sort of.
We have to expect what they did for Kiev Major, right? Like it's going to be broken up. Like there is going to be a South America, there is going to be a CIS.
So even if you start only giving them 1 slot to every region, you're quickly getting to the point you can only have 5-6 invites.
Yeah, and I like that, and that's a good point because that is better. That shows the scene is evolving because it is tougher competition. So they have that much more difficult of a time to choose the teams that are invited. So I would be fine if they stick with 5 now that you mention that.
To be fair, though, can we point out how, like, you can almost count the favorite that doesn't get invited in every single region? Like, SG Esports, in theory, hard favorites to win South America. North America, to be honest, it's NP. Like, the guys look
over
good.
DC?
I think NP over DC 100%. I think they're way more evolved on this. I think they're way more evolved on this patch. I think the way they're drafting, the way they're looking, like, I don't know if you watched the Summit series today. DC looked lost. even in the game they won lanes and snowballed it out. They just looked really confused in the way they drafted, the way they played. And I'm sorry, I think Bulba is done. Like, he has consistently been, like, the guy is brilliant. He's an amazing coach. He's great at the draft side of things, but he just looks lost as a player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's more NP looking really good, because I do agree that NP, especially with the roster change that they made, bringing up Highlight Die.
And in CIS, I'm siding with Empire. I mean, I think Na'Vi is on an upshot, that's for sure. But overall, I'm siding on Empire's side. I think
Vegas Squadron's honestly very good too.
Do they beat their own region though? When Vega goes into a tier 2 tournament against other tier 2 teams, they perform well. I'm not disagreeing there at all. They seem to struggle against the home field competition though.
Yeah. God, what did they win recently? They did something recently.
Well, the internet is a wonderful thing, Breaky.
I know, I'm looking at it right now. Let's see. Yeah, second there.
It was all second place finishes.
Oh, they qualify for Dream League, so there's that. They're going to DreamHack.
Yay. Like, DreamHack pretty much gave the middle finger to Dota at one point, just said, we're done with you. Like, they have events, sure, but other than Dream League, you go to an actual DreamHack and it's Hearthstone, it's CSGO, it's StarCraft even. Like, they're tapping out of the Dota side a lot, other than Dream League. Is that even ran by DreamHack?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. It's going to be at DreamHack Atlanta as the final, so. It was Starlight. I was thinking of Starlight. That's the land that they did go to. They finished 5th, 6th there. Again, nothing to write home about, but...
that was a year and a half ago. I mean, that was January of 2016.
No, the one in May, just last month.
Really?
Yeah, the Starlighter I-League Invitational, the one that Liquid won.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyways, the point, I do agree with you that Empire is the favorite of the Na'Vi, the Vega Squadrons for sure. But,
the CIS, yeah.
Yeah, the CIS region there. And then what do we got? Europe? Got Europe
TNC in Southeast Asia, probably... That one will be the most fun. I
don't even know if I'm sold on that one, yeah, because...
That'll be the most fun qualifier for sure.
It's fun for bad reasons, because it's so chaotic. You think one team's looking so good, like the TNC or Faceless or the Clutch Gamers, and then they go to LAN, and then they just completely crap, you know? They have not been doing
When you
well.
only scrim your region, it gets just to be weird. You have this, like... incestuous meta where you play against each other and you all develop your own counter strats to each other, and then you hit an international team and you just kind of throw your hands up and go, I don't know what to do. Like, these guys are good.
Yeah. All right, so Southeast Asia, CIS,
China is a mess.
China, oh my god.
I'm not even going to talk about China because I don't think there's a favorite, but I also don't think there's another team behind IG that even stands a chance. Like,
Newbie.
I don't think there's a... What do you think, LGD?
Newbie has to.
You think... Okay, so Newbie was the one I wanted to talk about, because I have them potentially in my 6th slot if they do 6 invites, but it's a really soft invite, because I don't think they're that good. Because, okay, let's look at their recent results, right? They won Zotac. That's their saving grace. They beat NP and Zotac, but the field is weak. If I look at that field... The only team I'm seeing that's getting an invite is IG Vitality. Or, that's IG Vit. That's not even IG. I don't see a single invitable team here in that field. And before that, it was Middle and Masters they got second in. So they posted results. I'm not disagreeing with that. But, I mean, if you're going to look down that road, I mean, there's so many teams you could start to consider. Like, could you ever consider NP or DC?
They're on that next list. So you got EG, OG, Liquid, VP, Invictus Gaming. They're the locks. They're the 5. Those are the 5.
That's your hard 5 for sure.
If they were doing a 6 invite, so yeah, in my mind, the teams that you have to consider are a newbie, who's might be at the top of the list, but then you do have Secret, Team NP, and Planet Odd are the other teams that kind of came to mind for me. I mean, Secret, they've kind of just always, and it's going off what you're saying earlier with the Kiev. You know, with the Kiev event, obviously they were looking hot in the group stages, and then they just ran into SG Esports, lost in that series, unfortunately. But, you know, outside of that, they've overall been doing, and I think Yapsor replacing Pylai Dai has actually been great for them.
Like, honestly, I am stupidly impressed. Like, Pylai Dai was one of the players. His first 6 months he played competitive Dota on a bigger team, I straight up said this guy needs to get cut. I thought he was awful. And he improved so fast. And then when they cut him, I thought, you're leaving a huge hole. This guy's made space for you forever. Like you put him into this role where all he does is run around, maybe go 1-for-1, ward a lot. Like he had a specific role in Secret, and I didn't know how anyone was going to fill that niche. YapzOr has done all that and be a driving force in their games. Like that guy has basically single-handedly carried games for Secret already.
Oh yeah.
His Rubik is getting banned like first or second phase almost every game. His Nyx play has been super impressive. I saw him last year at TI, and some of my friends were good friends with him, and so we talked to him. I mean, the kid was so nervous to play on a big stage. It was his first major LAN. He didn't know how he was going to do. He thought if he underperformed, he'd never play Pro Dota again. And it's safe to say he's cemented his ability to perform at this point.
Yeah. He's made it, and obviously with his success now, he's gotten a lot more comfortable. So yeah, I don't know if he's necessarily like a much better player than Paladai. It's just he fits better with the team. So
yeah, I would agree. He just brings a little more to what Secret needs. They already have mid one, which means you need two supports that are going to baby the kid, because mid one does a lot with space, but he struggles under pressure. So Paladai made a lot of space for him. And YapzOr has been doing that very, very well. He filled that niche, but he just filled it with a little more playmaking ability. So I like where he's at. I like it a lot. And when I said DC, I absolutely meant Planet Odd. Their signing is, I still call him DC because I'm not paying attention. But,
yeah.
But
Planet
that's
Odd,
even a little
hard
hard to want to say, though, because what have they done since?
Yeah. No, Planet Odd has always been for me one of those just like, should we be impressed by these guys? Like, because obviously, yes, they got second place at TI6, so they're still riding that hype train to today.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. But you can't discount the fact they won it. They got that far with Moo.
Yeah,
and there is a reason when we were at TI, everyone was chanting Moo, not DC. Like, they built that team around him to an extent with the way they drafted in that meta, in that patch. And I don't know. The team just hasn't quite felt the same since he's been gone. Moon plays a different role than Moo. They're both offlaners, but they're totally different players.
Yeah, no, and I'm trying to even look back at their results here too, and they qualify for DreamHack, but they finished 7th, 8th in Epicenter, the greatest finish for them there. And again, overall, they really haven't.
Their only claim to an invite is, you didn't invite the winner last year. We got second. Like, the winner doesn't exist. So give us the slot. I don't see it happening. No. I would like to only see 5 invites. I would like it just to be Liquid in the top 4 from Kiev. I think that's the cleanest way to do it. It's the 4 teams that qualified top 4, and then the team that's kind of come out as a shining star in the last month. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely only been in the last 2 months that Liquid has shown up and posted results. But they've been fun to watch for a long time.
Going back to the Summit event, that's where I do feel like the Summit event is actually more important now than maybe we were realizing last week or the week before. Kind of talking about this as I was previewing this on an earlier podcast show of like the ranking of these tournaments, whatever. Because I feel like if Team Secret goes through this event and just wins it all, especially in dominating fashion. I mean, so far, they're in the winners finals as we're doing this recording here against LGD. If they win this whole event here and what is decent competition overall, as we've been stressing, I do feel like they could be that team that squeaks in themselves at that 6th spot.
I could see it. I think the differentiator between 5 and 6 invites is going to come down to, does a team actually deserve it? I don't think we're going to see a 6th one just handed out because they want 6.
Oh, no.
And so, yeah, maybe if Secret wins this, there's a shot. Because who else is at Summit that's kind of question marks?
NP.
I don't think you're ever inviting Empire. Maybe NP.
NP's the other one for me. I do feel like you got to give a little bit of credit to NP.
They've just always posted good results. That's the hard part, to count them out. Yeah, they're not winning, but 2nd at Zotac Masters, 3rd at Manila Masters. They cleared 1st round at DAC. While not a great finish, it's a finish. Yeah, they'd have to win this in very convincing fashion. Like, I'm talking a 3-0, 2-hour-long total final.
Yeah, I'm more sold on Secret.
Yeah. And I think if you invite Secret, it's because of the storylines, right? You're getting Puppy back to another TI. Like, they need to do something to justify giving them the slot, but I think Valve would like to give them the slot. They just need the reason.
All right, so Yeah, that's going to be something to see what they decide to do here, and kind of with these results, how the invites play out. If neither of those teams win, and they still give an invite out, then it's going to be curious to almost think like, well, did they just really want 6 teams in the end? Because, but then of course there's still Newbie. Now Newbie has the disadvantage of obviously not playing.
Well, and then the question is, if you only invite 5 or only invite 6, who gets double slots on the regions? Who's worthy of two qualifiers? Because you could justify there are 2 NA teams that could perform maybe in New DC, Thunderbirds, whatever they're called now. Planet Odd.
Planet Odd. I hate the name.
Changed,
I mentioned that earlier.
So maybe them, maybe NP. I'm going to be fair, man. As bad as Complexity's results have been, they don't miss TIs. They get to go one way or the other. So I'm not counting them out as bad as they have been. I just can't. They're the gatekeepers of North America, man, for TI. They really are.
Okay, that's down the line. Well, when we get to the regional qualifiers, we can start.
Okay, are we touching on that? Okay.
Well, let's kind of transition from that though, and bring up the idea of what you said there of how many teams are going to be from each region, though. Now, so if we feel like there's going to be 5 invited teams, possibly 6. So let's put the scenario: if there's 5 invited teams, they're not going to bring a 6. They're going to stick with 5.
Okay.
Right now, I have it China 2. EU 2. It would be CIS, Southeast Asia, NA, and SA all with 1, and then we have to add in 1 more there if it's only 5 invited teams.
Huh?
Where would it go to? CIS, SEA, NA, or SA?
You're giving China 2?
Oh yeah, there's no way they're not getting 2. Come on.
Okay.
Come on.
So we got 1 left to give out. Who else is single right now that could potentially have them? I think we're talking CIS. And Americas, basically,
CIS,
right? Maybe
NA,
SEA?
and Southeast Asia. Because Southeast Asia did get 2 at Kiev. We have to remember that.
Uh-huh.
So
and they're not getting an invited
probably.
team.
Exactly.
We pretty much know they're not getting an invite. So I would say they're probably going to get 2, just being that they have 0 teams that have a shot at getting invited.
Yeah, that for me too. I want to say NA. I mean, that's the bias coming out for sure. But because who do you have in NA then at that point? Obviously, you have EG would be going.
EG's going, so you have NP,
DC,
DC,
Planet Odd,
Complexity. Fire's got another new roster that's going to be bad, but in the qualifier.
But even with those 4 teams, I mean, 2 of those
Freedom
teams
is
going.
GG. I mean, there's this GG too. We haven't even touched on them.
Of course.
But yeah, is there 2 that could compete? I think CIS is worthy of that second slot. I think Empire, and if Navi shows up at Summit here, I think both of them have a shot at competing. Because when you're talking TI, you just don't want blowouts. You want a team that looks like they stand a chance.
I want to go back to what you said earlier too with the business side of it, and honestly, I do think there is a little bit of that. That's why we have South American qualifiers in the first place. Let's be honest. With that in mind, I do think it's going to be Southeast Asia because that region is so freaking big, especially with the Philippines and everything. They want to make sure they have 2 teams, I'm sure. So I'm going to put it with 2 in Southeast Asia. As much as I would like to see NA, and I do agree with CIS, you could argue them for sure. I think
I agree with you. I think SEA is going to get it. It just kind of feels bad because, okay, so you got to understand from Valve's perspective. While yes, you want the best competition you can get at a TI, you want the highest quality games you can get, you want to build storylines. And I don't think enough people acknowledge this when they're either understanding this as a fan or even as a pro player or a manager. But their entire purpose, their entire business is backed on building a storyline that carries through, a dark horse team running deep or a fan favorite playing in this event. And you got to get that sort of thing. So you want to bring teams, at least for qualifier slots, when you're thinking who might go, that are going to have this fan-driven engagement, that are going to build these cool storylines. And, I mean, we kind of saw it with TNC last year making their run when Demon was playing with them. Like, that was the dark horse team of the year for sure. No one expected them to do well.
Yeah. Well, Southeast Asia also has, pretty good history making deep runs in TI, don't they? I mean, Fnatic did one of the years. You got MVP, obviously. Wasn't that last year even? So
Yeah, I mean, you've had MVP Phoenix, you've had MVP Hot Six, there's been one dominant team in Southeast Asia for a long time, and it's only been in the last year to 6 months that we've seen multiple teams come out of the region. So, curious to see how they perform. If they do get 2 slots, they're gonna have to show that they earned them, because they had 2 in the last major, as you said, but.
Yeah, it's just when you compare it, so what their top 2 teams are TNC and Faceless. You say the top 2 for NA are Planet Odd and DC or Team NP
EG.
even,
and then
well, no, I mean, and the ones that aren't not part of the invite list. So yeah,
NP for sure. NP makes that list for sure, and then 2 is a question mark. But that's what you got to ask: is that the point of the qualifier, to get a question mark from each region in to get something like that? And we don't know if they're going to do a wild card yet or not, a play-in team.
Okay, well, so that now leads us into the next part here, because so the breakdown that I had right there actually was only for 15 teams total. That leaves us then one more spot for the wild card.
Which the way they've historically done the wild card is if you get second in a qualifier with one region, you go play the wild card.
Now, what I was thinking, and actually the changes a little bit. So if we're gonna give 2 to SCA, what I was originally gonna say is that you just have the runner-up of CIS, SEA, NA, and SA, and then they go as wild card.
Sure.
But if you have 2 as Southeast Asia now, then you couldn't exactly do that. Maybe 1 from CIS, 1 from NA, 1 from SA, and then maybe a third from Europe, like a third, fourth place match there, and get 1 from Europe.
Or China. China might have a stronger third. The problem is China is the first region we've seen really developing farm teams, where they have, Newbie Young, LGD Young, Newbie are, they all have these sub-teams. And when you're getting a sub-team in, this is really healthy to the scene. And I in all honesty, I would love for Valve to give a little extra love to China, just as a nod to what they're doing over there. Because we need these type of farm systems. We need these tier 2 developments in these teams, because it's going to build Dota overall. It sets a player base playing in a competitive format and gives them time to build up. So honestly, I like extra teams from China. If we have an extra slot to throw out or next to a wild card, I want to see it out of there.
And if we only have the 5 invited teams initially, right now, at this point, there would only be 1 team out of China, and that's Invictus Gaming going so far. So, I could see them putting a third one for China and then having, as a result, that would be the 4 teams. For those that may not know what we're talking about, so basically, they did in the past, at least couple of years, they've done a wild card event at TI where, as you said, the runner-up of certain qualifiers, we're trying to figure that out, how they would do it here. But essentially, they would send 4 teams from different regions to TI to participate in a 4-team small playoff. Then the winner of that would then go on to the actual main event.
All right, you want my crazy idea that if I was building the event from scratch and had my own decisions?
Okay.
I mean, in a perfect world, you play all the close qualifiers on LAN in their region. That's not happening.
Yeah.
But if you took just the top 4 from each region in the qualifiers and they played on LAN at Seattle as their close qualifier was finishing pre-TI, the week of or the week before, that would be ideal, because then you could do the play-in format however you wanted for the wildcards. You'd have all the teams on site. You'd have 0 ping issues, which is a huge issue across Europe if they don't split CIS, across, a lot of these regions in reality, even North America. You're talking 40 ping from West Coast to East Coast. That's a sizable difference. And you got to wonder if it does have a little bit of impact. I mean, we've seen hero picks change based on LAN versus online. So I would love to see the top 4 of each close qualifier just come to Seattle.
Would you be willing to take $1 million off the prize pool if that meant making that happen? Of course you would.
I've said for a lot of times. No, I've said for a lot of times, I think this prize pool is way overblown. In reality, I think it should almost be hard capped at 10. And then what we do with the rest is kick it back into different other things. A farm league being the one I've been most vocal about. What China's already starting to work on. I wish Valve would sponsor a league like that, where every region, if you had a secondary team or you weren't top 4 in your region, you could play in this thing that just had an okay prize pool, nothing major, but a way to build your scene up and get more people into this tier 2 scene. I think the pool is way too big. I don't think we need that kind of prize pool. Strictly because at this point it's just I'm trying to think of a politically correct way to word this. It's just an honor thing. You can walk around and say, we've got the biggest prize pool, go us. In reality, whether you win okay, so if the prize pool is 10 million, first place would get 5. If you win $1 million as a player, you've made it further than all but the top 20 people ever in esports. Like, you've made more money than you ever could. And that's not even counting salaries, streaming, sponsorships, everything else you've got on the back of that. And that money could be used so well in the system. But Valve's been very hands-off with all that.
Well, and I think the obvious thing with that is, and the biggest thing is, they're scared to. Because what starts happening when it does get lower, because every year it's basically increased, right? And this may be the year, that's something else we could talk about too in a little bit, but this could be the year where it doesn't actually break last year's. It seems like it's starting to level off a little bit. I'm not saying that's for certain, and it very likely still. In fact, I did predict it to reach 24 million, I think, in the prediction thing, so hoping it does. But are we going to need that year of it not breaking the record to then get Valve to be like, well, you know what? If it's less anyways, let's go ahead and maybe use that money elsewhere kind of deal?
I don't think Valve ever will. Valve wants to be extremely hands-off on it. They don't want to touch it. And because of that, I don't think we're going to see that kind of interaction. I mean, if you just talk to players, you'll see them say, the tier 2 scene is faltering. The tier 3 scene is faltering. We don't have enough events where people can make a living unless they're placing top 8 at majors.
Yeah.
And we used to see all of these things. The Join Dota League is a huge one, or the PD Cup. PD Cup especially, the admin came to me asking for teams in North America. He only wanted to run an 8-team season this month, and he couldn't find 8 teams in North America to play.
Yeah.
Like... Unfortunately, like, if the prize pool does go down, I think it can't be attributed to anything except we don't have enough new talent coming in. We're not developing this scene at a base enough level.
Yeah, if you look at any traditional sport, they all have their build-up scenes. They all have their amateur leagues and their ways to, make sure they're getting players filtering in and advancing forward. And that is a great point. I mean, that's something you do hope that Valve makes adjustments on, but again, maybe it is going to need something dramatic, like the price was starting to go down.
Now, I will say we've got to point out that at this date last year, the prize pool was only 11.5. We're well over 3 million over that already.
See, I was trying to find that graph. Do you have that graph that you're looking at?
I can find it for you here. I looked it up like 2 days ago is the only reason I remember. But
see, I know it has been more than last year's at the same time so far. So yeah, okay, take a look at this here. What are we at? So comparing. Oh wait, what? Oh no, that's okay. I thought that was T7.
All right, so if you look at July 1st of last year, you'll notice the exact day they announced stretch goals.
Oh, you did 2016, like okay.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Last year's. Yeah.
Well, if you type 2017 at the top, it actually pulls up this year's with it in as well. So.
Sure.
Anyways.
So you can see the exact points last year where they announced stretch goals, and I think that'll be how they make it. If they want to clear it this year, that's going to be how they do it. They have to have incentive to make a push. We've hit the point where most people that are going to buy compendiums are buying compendiums. The only extra money coming in now are people that are on the fence and just commit to it, or people that are 20 levels from something they really want, and they get one more 24 pass bolster or 24 level bolster. Until they announce more goals or more stuff, I don't see it going explosively. But yeah, I mean, right now we're on pace for 25 mil. That's nothing to scoff at whatsoever.
That's just more money. Yeah. It's just getting bigger and better. Yeah, we are $1 million over what we were last year. Yeah. That's crazy. Okay, so yeah, I guess it probably is going to hit over, as you said, as long as they
June
just
15th,
get those
we're 3 million over right now.
No.
June 15th for 2016 was 11.8 right now. We're at 14.9.
Well, no, you're comparing it. This compares it by the days it's been activated.
Oh, days it's been okay. So they activated it at a different date last year.
Exactly. Yeah. So according to the days it's been open, it's just over 1 million. But obviously,
I love how in 2 days it went from 16 or 1.6 million to like 8 million last year. It was explosive. But anyway, there's a lot of money. It is overkill. I would like them to develop something more, but yeah.
All right. Well, that How did we even get on that tangent? I don't even remember. Anyways.
Talking about if the prize pool dropped, what would happen?
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Well, so it goes back to the wild card itself, and so I guess it comes down to how many teams that they're going to invite again. Will it be the 5? Will it be the 6? We're both sold that. Sounds like 5 is definitely what we would like to see, depending if maybe Secret just runs through this event. But then you have Newbie and Planet Odd in the Galaxy battles. I mean, they're both in that event actually set to play in the winter bracket finals themselves. So it's like, what if Newbie wins that event in decisive fashion? It's not as tough as competition.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. They're not playing against any invited, like locked invited teams in that. And I think that's exactly what you're looking at as a benchmark, is can these teams compete against the invites? And we're out of time to figure that out.
Oh, yeah. All right. Cool. So, yeah, I guess that's our takes in on the TI7 invites here. Obviously, by this time, hell, earlier than this time next week, we will know the actual invited teams, and then we can discuss.
Oh, do I get back next week for the repeat episode so we can talk about how wrong we are?
Whoa. Let's hold your horses here.
I'm excited.
Of course. So something else I did want to talk with you about, though, while I do have you on here is not a big deal necessarily, but patch 7.06D coming out. This just took place, on June 11th here. So basically at the beginning of this week. So
basically you've got a week as a team to acclimate to the new changes before the qualifiers for TI. That's not a lot of time.
Yeah, the game's constantly shifting. By now, I mean, you kind of just have to be used to that, right? It's just going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. But in reality, if you look at it, I mean, I think the most notable and obvious change is the bristle nerfs. Everyone knew they had to come.
Oh, yeah.
And in typical Valve fashion, they didn't nerf what everyone was complaining about, his tankiness through bristleback or his cold spray damage. They nerfed his strength gain, which does have an impact there, and they nerfed his warpath damage. And I think a lot of casual viewers that read that say, oh, that doesn't matter. That's not a big deal. That's nothing. But in reality, if you look at how bristle's used, teams were getting level 7, getting a Vanguard on him, and he was just posting up and hitting a building. Like, you couldn't go on him or you'd all die. And so he was just chipping away slowly but surely, and him losing 2 damage a stack, so essentially 10 damage when he was hitting a tower, it's a non-negligible amount. Mm-hmm. It definitely just tweaks him out a little bit here and hurts him. I think the funniest patch from this was the Hand of God heal increase on Chen. One of the pro players tweeted, well, at least it heals more than Howl now. That was the funniest line of the patch notes to me.
Yeah, when we started seeing Lycan, I remember that being brought up, and that kind of opened my eyes to be like, wow, that's true. Chen's ultimate is actually awful when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, look at Mech, right? We're not seeing that many teams pick up a Mech anymore.
No.
And if Mech's fading, Chen ult's fading, because if Mech's not enough to win you a team fight, Chen ult's just a bad Mech. Heals you without giving you armor. So, yeah, it's just... Chen's in a bad spot, man. You've either got to have like one of the best Chen players in the world to even think of picking that. There's just no reason over an Enchantress right now or something.
Well, I was hoping that with the jungle changes, especially going back to the 1 minute spawns now, like that we would actually see Chen a bit more, but you're right. It's just, I guess the Enchantress is just usually always going to be better, especially with their semi-carry presence. So
Chen and Enchantress have a huge caveat that junglers like Enigma don't have, where they're not killing the creep they enchant. Like, if they need to buff a Chen Enchantress thing, what they need to do is make it so even if you don't get gold, you get experience from creeps that you enchant. Because right now, you hurt your own jungle so badly if you have to just constantly grab new creeps. If your creeps die as Chen, you've pretty much lost the game. Like, to go back in and grab a whole new set of creeps that you don't get XP for, that they got golden XP for, it's just crippling.
I'm sorry, I had no clue what you're saying because I'm watching them do cosplay right now.
Shut the stream off. I am too. I just didn't let it bother me.
They got Alina, Crystal Maiden, a TA. They're even doing these pose. They're standing there and doing the pose where they kind of like shake and just like constantly move.
All right, let's touch on that for a minute then, because for those that didn't know, every major now since the Philippines, the first time Philippines had their tournament, they've done a cosplay contest, and there's been a prize pool. There's been some exposure to it, and some of these have been really cool. The amount of time and effort these people put in, I mean, it's insane. Hundreds and hundreds of hours.
Have you been to like a BlizzCon?
I've seen the cosplays. I have not been to one.
Yeah, the BlizzCon ones, those are just crazy what they do. But really, I'm sure any of these conventions.
Well, like the Raynor one is always the iconic one that people see. There's one guy with like a $20,000 Raynor suit he built. and it's just nuts. But even looking back at the very first sponsored cosplay contest, there was a Doom that was just insane in the Philippines. Like it looked picture perfect.
Well, this so far is a lot of just sexy ladies, dressing up in the
I'm gonna stay off that
costumes,
topic, or Toby's gonna hear us all the way from Twitter and like start saying, "Don't insult my waifu." So
he does post a lot of those pictures. That is true.
oh man,
He is
yeah,
having fun
yes,
with
he
this
does.
right now.
Yes, he does.
All right, distractions. Anyways, back to the patch. Well, that's what we're talking about. So
I'm a little surprised to see Invoker get hit with the nerf bat yet again. Nerfing his early laning presence and an alacrity cooldown increase. Minor, but I mean, that guy's been beat with the bat so many times. Like, how long do you have to go until he's finally dead?
yeah. What happened to Alchemist, by the way? We did not see him at Epicenter. He still has not been picked in Summit. Like, they did buff him this patch a little bit to try to maybe appeal, but he just fucking died, though.
I mean, my 7.06 talks with you, I said that was going to be the sleeper broken pick. And the only team that's ran it with success is OG. And even they've lost some games with it all of a sudden. They're struggling to make it work. It just comes down to the fact that he isn't... I'm trying to think how to word this. He's not unkillable in the way a Bristle is unkillable. You can burst an Alk even with the Manta Octarine Radiance combo. You can shred through his health pool and just pop him. And the second that happens, then the game just feels over. You committed all your net worth into this hero, and the rubber band mechanics and the comeback mechanics are a little too strong right now. He's just... I thought he was going to come out because they nerfed gold gain for so many mechanics, and his didn't get nerfed, really. And so I thought he was going to just explode out into the patch. But then they did nerf the gold gain, and all of a sudden he just fell off. I mean, he doesn't exist.
Yeah, and I think you could argue, too, that he takes that mid slot where there's just so many good middle heroes right now, especially, again, with the addition of the extra creeper, even getting 16er. So perhaps that has something to do with it, too, but it's just overall.
Honestly, I think a big part of it, and I hadn't really thought of this before, it might have been the jungle changes. You'd think stacking every minute helps him, but in reality, what we saw is when the jungle started respawning every minute, we saw not the death, but a downplay of 4 rolls of roaming heroes. And when you get rid of those roaming type heroes that are going to come assist you in the mid lane and help out, someone's got to roam. Someone has to rotate to lanes and kill things. And we're seeing that be a Quap at level 6 or a Lina at level 6, where they're just roaming quickly, grabbing 2 kills on their safe lane or their off lane, and rolling right back into mid and farming. And Alk can't do that. You can't just go run to another lane and gank his Alk. That's 2-3 minutes of farm you just waste.
Yeah.
So I actually think that may be a part of it. The mids have just had to be so much more active in the game.
No, that makes a lot of sense, actually, yeah. Well, I mean, there's obviously reasons, because, again, he was not picked at all in Epicenter and still not picked in Summit, so he just completely died off.
What about Monkey King? Monkey King just died.
One. Yeah.
Like... I think he got nerfed a little too hard last time, and teams still played him and played him and played him. And then all of a sudden he just fell off a cliff. I think teams finally, like their coach said, look at these win rates, quit picking this hero. It's not good. The biggest change that killed him was the vision nerf. When he's sitting on a tree, he didn't have ward vision. All of a sudden it was way reduced. If you didn't already have a ward there, you weren't going to see somebody. And yeah, he just fell off entirely.
Yeah, he's another hero that, again, he was not picked at Epicenter, actually. He was seen all the time before that. So, yeah, I get talking of that, they did kind of slightly buff him, because you're all right. They really gave him the nerf hammer in 7.06 there in general. So they're trying to bring it back up a little bit, but it's going to take a while to fine-tune him again, I feel like.
It will. They've pretty much cemented him into a 4 if he's going to be anything, in the way that they changed Primal Spring this patch. Adding 40 damage to a skill at level 1 is far from negligible. That's a lot. And so he did get a 40 damage buff on his level 1 Primal Spring. I don't think it's enough to bring him back, but they've kind of pointed that that's the direction they want him to go into.
I'm kind of looking through here. Night Stalker, the old good old Hunter, the night mana cost actually got increased from 50 to 80. So, of course, that new activatable just allows you to fly. Has been fun to watch, and we definitely have seen the impact of it. We've seen more Night Stalker here, but then the Void Day Slow actually duration reduced from 2 to 1.25 seconds, so even getting slightly nerfed in the daytime on top of that. But
yeah, and it just seems like it's either Night Stalker or Coddle. Almost every patch gets touched. and it always seems like one of the two is in the meta. Well, maybe not first pick, first ban. They're always around, and they're just so they accomplish a very similar end game goal. You get an Ags, you get a bunch of vision, you do something with that vision. But I mean, Coddle's the high ground defense, whereas Night Stalker's a really aggressive roamer. I'm really liking the offlane Night Stalker that we've seen, especially out of MP. MSS has played it quite a bit, and been super fun to watch. It's just so aggressive.
Then another fun one is the Treant Protector. Getting another nerf here, the base movement speed
What's
reduced.
a Treant Protector? Have we seen that? I don't know. Tree's just hard. Living armor is a mechanic no other hero has. There's no other way to heal a building. So that hero's just on this weird mark where if he's even playable, people will pick him because he has a mechanic no one else can do. Like, what do you do against something like that? You either have to nerf him into oblivion and make him unplayable, or he's broken.
Yeah.
That's the problem with any new like mechanic that just flat out doesn't exist in Dota. And we've seen those kind of struggles come up where it's just, how do you play against it? What's the counterplay?
All right, so again, not the biggest patch right here, but definitely just a couple of notes to bring up.
There's one more. Oh yeah, the other one I wanted to talk about. NP. So we don't see very many teams still running Nature's Prophet.
No.
But he got a 4 damage buff to his Treant damage. So that compounds, right? You're summoning multiple Treants, so you're getting a little more and more damage. And if we go to a meta that gets away from a bunch of wave clear, where your mid can't spam waves, you're not running stuff like Keepers of the Light that can hold high ground, NP is on that balance precipice where I think skilled NP players are going to start playing him again. Because he has so many talents that work with his trees. He's got spawn extra treants. He's got spawn or double their health and damage. And when you buff one thing like this that gets compounded, it could get out of hand. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of NP come into the qualifiers.
Yeah, that could be interesting there. Crystal made it. Were you talking about her earlier?
I had not yet, no.
Okay, well, because I thought that might have been the one when I was distracted. But actually, funny thing about Crystal made it is because, again, this hero at Epicenter, she was the most played hero and had one of the highest win percentages on top of that, which is a combination that should never happen.
It's like the third tournament in a row she's done that, too.
At least been the top played in a very good win percentage, yes.
Yeah.
And right now in Summit, she's 4 of 5 games she's won, and she's one of the most top played heroes so far. So even with this nerf, I mean, Frostbite mana cost increased at all levels. 115 to 140 at level 1 especially is the big thing there.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. It hurts a little bit of her farm potential, you could argue, and that, overall damage killing potential, I guess. But that's unless they touch her passive or her ultimate, I don't know if that much is going to change.
It all circles back to what I told you in I think my first change on the patch notes when we read the jungle camps respawning every minute. I didn't say junglers were back. I said 5s that can jungle, supports that can jungle, and potentially offlaners that can jungle. We're back with a vengeance. CM is like the most notable one of those. She can just quick go frostbite a hard camp. Okay, kill the big creep off, leave the small, frostbite another one. I'm 2. Then all of a sudden you've got aura rolling. You are still able to be in lane and helping your carry. Just does so much as a hard 5 with 0 items and is still able to get her levels. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to touch CM because I think the biggest issue she has in her toolkit is Frostbite can kill a hard camp. But if you change that, she's unplayable. Like, not even possible to play in Dota. But if you touch the aura, maybe that is the balance point.
What a radical idea here. What if you make the aura instead an actual aura around you rather than global?
It used to be a long time ago. It was bad. Like, you couldn't run it. Those kind of auras are just falling off. We're seeing teams apply a lot of pressure around the map. We're seeing your offlaner needs to be an independent force that can do stuff on his own, like the bristles. While I think it's an interesting change, it'd have to be like way overbuffed. If you want something like that, you already have OD as an option with Essence Aura being something that can do that sort of a thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think you just ruin the identity so much if you would do that. And it gets rid of her hard 5 use a lot. Like level 2 all of a sudden isn't helping the team, really. Yeah.
All right, well, we'll see if they. This has to be it. Like, they're not going to have another patch after this one, all right? Like, this is until the qualifiers, and then after the qualifiers, between then and TI,
there may be another E patch, like another micro patch, we won't see any sweeping changes. I will say I was surprised they didn't touch any items in 7.060.
No,
I thought for sure we were going to see some minor tweaks to stuff, but yeah, nothing.
Wow, I just noticed this line right here. That's pretty dramatic. Pugna, attack range increase from 600 to 630.
What do you do with him?
30
Like,
attack. They're just like, here, let's make this hero playable somehow. Let's give him 30 attack range.
We're still in an age where supports are buying Tome at 10 minutes to make it to 6. An underleveled Pugna's not good enough. Mid Pugna's not a Dota hero. Like, I love Pugna's kit. I've been thrashed by mid Pugnas in matchmaking before, but in a competitive game, it just has a weird toolkit to utilize. It's like Lesh. Like, Lesh, in theory, is a fantastic hero. He can shove towers on his own. He can clear waves. He has a stun. He's super fast. But he needs levels. But if you run him as a mid, he doesn't do enough.
Yeah.
Like, it's that kind of an approach where he's just not quite there. And I think the only way they're going to get there is if Valve differentiates them some more. Like, flat out says in a patch, we either want this to be a support or we want this to be a mid.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, on that note, Zrock, I think that we'll do it then. So, as always, want to thank you for joining me on these good discussions that we had, and I guess we could look to have you back on next week as well.
Maybe.
Follow
we'll
up.
See. We'll see.
No, obviously by then we're going to know the actual teams that are invited and can start previewing them the regional qualifiers, which is going to be a lot of fun. Definitely looking forward to that and seeing what we have to talk about there. But
yeah,
as always,
once those roll around, you'll be doing a little bit of on-site work there, huh?
Yeah, no, that should be fun. You know, being there at the BTS hub, we're gonna. I don't know what to expect, man. Just the hot tub time machine, I guess we're doing, going back in time. I don't know.
I saw the baby picture. I saw the picture.
I was a cute little kid. Yeah,
something like that. All right, man. You have a good night. It's good to be on.
Okay, so thanks again to Zrock for joining us here on the podcast show. Great discussions there, as always. A good buddy of mine. Now, however, coming close to the wrapping up of the show, but before we do, I always like to finish things off with the competitive surge, where we go over basically other Dota 2 competitive tournaments and announcements that have happened that maybe we didn't get the chance to really discuss on the show, but it's worth pointing out some news basically in a quick fire fashion. So we'll start with the top here, the Galaxy Battles. Great. We talked a little bit about this, but just to reiterate, the Galaxy Battles event currently going on, the $150,000 prize pool that's happening in China. Currently, as we're recording this, Newbie and Planet Odd have made their way into the winter finals of the tournament. IG Vitality and Vici are in the losers round 2. And then we have TNC versus Infamous, Happy Feet versus Mouse Sports. Now, an interesting start to this event, actually. It was a day delayed. However, they weren't necessarily making up the matches. So what was initially supposed to be a best of 2 group stages ended up being a best of 1 group stages. And then I believe they even changed the format of the playoffs, possibly, or maybe not. I was hearing some funky stuff. It's to say the least, it seems like the event has been a little disorganized, but they are moving along. Currently, all the teams are still active in the event, or eligible. But yeah, it's going to be fun to see how that plays out there. And the idea of Newbie, especially, I think they have the most to lose, or most to win, frankly. If they win this event, not that this is a very prestigious event, but we're talking about TI7 invites, then again, if they win this, I could really perhaps push them over the edge of just enough to do it. But that's another discussion. Point is, Galaxy Battle's going on, so we'll see how that shapes up. That's going to continue to happen on through the weekend, of course, covered by good old Moonduck over there. The open qualifiers for the International 7, speaking of that, were officially announced here this last week. They're actually going to be from June 22nd through the 25th. It's going to be 8 different regions, and actually going to have 2 different open qualifiers for each of the regions. Very similar to what they did for Kiev and so on. But those are the dates for that. So June 22nd through 25th, again, coming up literally next week. So it's just crazy how fast all of this is actually coming up here. Another event that's actually either going on or going to be starting soon here. It's a hard to find exact information on it, but an interesting idea of an event, what's called the Arena Champions Series, Champions Division. Essentially, it's a South African tournament being hosted for South African teams, and it's kind of cool to see that. I know Red Eye is definitely a big advocate in getting South African esports scene going, and it's kind of cool to see something like this happening as a result. So perhaps a new region that we could start looking forward to seeing players from. But again, not really much information on it other than there's 8 teams. Obviously, I can't say I recognize really any of the teams of the players. That's pretty much a given. But again, it's always kind of fun to see new regions being fostered and hopefully getting something from it. So as far as a couple more roster updates here, Pro Dota, the organization Pro Dota officially announced that they dropped their Dota 2 team immediately here. I'm reading the post here as it literally just posted yesterday at this point, but it suggests, and I quote, internal issues revolving around the organization and the players, as well as inter-team dynamics, have been simmering over the last few weeks, coming to a boiling point only now. We will be bidding farewell to Milan, 3-3, Kaiser, and J4, the 4 most recent additions that joined the team in April this year. So basically, announcing that again, dropping the roster right here. That means one of their players is actually still a part of the organization, I guess. I'm trying to confirm. It's Garter, I want to say. Yeah, Garter is, he has the same thing before the initial roster change. So very interesting to kind of hear that, though, again, especially with the timing here. But I guess just some internal issues similar to the Cloud9 situation, it almost sounds like. So, but that's the case there. And interesting here, 343, a player 343. He's been a somewhat successful player, of course, out of Malaysia there. He's actually, won a fair amount of money in his history. He's got a decent finish at the Manila Major last year with his Fnatic squad there. Point is, he's actually going to be coaching Complexity for the upcoming international season right here. So picked up as the coach, and that could definitely help them moving forward. Going to be interesting to see what strategies coming out from them now. So that is going to do it, though, for the competitive surge and thus the show here for the DotPro. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as always. Definitely a lot to talk about as expected and had some fun discussions there. With that said, a big shout out to both LD and Zrock for joining me here. Always helps out with these shows, and already look forward to next week's. But I honestly really can't wait for next week because if everything shapes up, we should know the invite teams by next week's show, and then we can really start breaking it down and kind of doing our reactions, and of course then looking towards the qualifiers themselves and start even previewing that. So, and if in case you haven't heard, guys, I am going to be going to the BTS Hub and doing casting for the TI7 qualifiers at the BTS Hub. I'm going to be part of all that fun. I'm really looking forward to it again. I was there for the Kiev qualifiers and had a ton of fun. And, the theme this time around is the, what is it? The time machine, the bath. I'm totally blanking right now. What the hell is it called? Anyways, the point is, it's going to be a lot of fun as it usually is with those BTS guys. And now, to clarify also on that, I do plan to still do a show that week. In fact, it could even be cooler the fact that I'll be, in person with some people that I could bring on and do some interviews with. So that's I'll talk a little bit more about that next week, but just to be sure in terms of what's happening then. But guys, again, it's good to be back. Hopefully you enjoyed this show. As always, leave me any kind of feedback or any kind of comments that you like at BreakyCPK. And I already look forward to seeing you guys next week. Once again, here on the DotPro with BreakyCPK. Have a good night, guys. We'll see you next time.